Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the annual dinner for the Ottawa Royal Astronomical Society of Canada 2012. I'd like to welcome you all here this evening and thank you all for coming. This is one of the more enjoyable aspects of being president of this club. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Al Scott, and this is probably one of the last official functions I'll have as your president. Our next monthly meeting on the 30th of November, we'll have our elections, and if all goes well, my esteemed colleague here, Gary, is going to take over as your new president. And
Celestron telescopes for everybody.
he's got a great platform.
I'm voting for him.
So before we get started, I'll just give a brief year in review for you. It won't be long. We've had a really exciting year in 2012. Our membership this year is standing currently at around 321 members, including 7 youth members, which is more than twice the amount we had last year, which is quite impressive. Over the past year, we've had a lot of interesting events. It's been a historic year with the Transit of Venus event, the last one in most of our lifetimes. We had, 3,000 visitors at the museum to view the transit, and we had our robotic telescope, Smart Scope, online and showing footage of the transit at the event. It was a lot of work for a lot of volunteers, and as a volunteer organization, I'm really proud of the work that our volunteers have put in to keep this organization going. Thank you. We had the Science Fun Fest again this year at NRC in Booth Street. We must have had about 1,500 people come by through our booth to look at our displays and our telescopes. We supported Astronomy Day again this year at the museum, and we had hundreds of people come by and take eclipse goggles from us, and we had some nice pictures of a few of us wearing eclipse goggles that were published in the Ottawa Citizen, associated with an article by Brian McCullough. Good job, Brian. We had also, a lot of our members were in the news. Many articles and photos by our members were published in Sky News this year, including a 15-year-old youth member, Jacob Von Chorus, which is an impressive achievement at any age. Mr. Von Chorus also won the Greenwich Royal Observatory's 2012 Young Astronomy Photographer of the Year Award this year.
Wow. Wow.
So, I don't want to keep you too long. It's really been great. I think you guys are going to have a great year coming up under Gary, and looking forward to another fun year. So thank you all for coming, and I hope you enjoy your dinner. Now, before we get going, as a Royal Society, we have one event that we always do every year, a toast to the Queen, our sponsor. So I'd like you all to fill your glasses and stand. To the Queen.
Mr. President.
Thank you. Please be seated. And now, I'm sure you're all hungry, so I'll hand this over to our capable host, Gordy, who is going to help us out with the buffet this evening.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, it's my pleasure to welcome you here to Northwestern College. On behalf of all of us here, we'd like to say, it's a little early, but we'll say, this is the beginning of the festive season. And every year when I do this function, I know Christmas is just around the corner. This will be the first banquet for the festive season. Starting next week, we will be sold out Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night. So I'll be working hard. So what I would like to do on behalf of all of us, the nice people at Algonquin, I wish you all the very best during the holiday season. In saying that, ladies and gentlemen, I ask you to remain seated. I will go around table to table, at which time I'll invite you to the buffet area. We have one buffet table, but I can handle two lines, one on the inside and one on the outside. Our chef this evening was responsible for putting your meal together, and Anson is no stranger to doing buffets. As a matter of fact, she's one of the best students we've had over the years in Algonquin, and I have a lot of faith and confidence in her. And she did a beautiful job for you this evening, except for one thing, and they all have a flaw. So if we can focus our attention on Anson at this moment, if I can have the lights down. Anson, she did a great job, and she did put the beef in the oven, and she did manage to cook the beef partially because she put it in a little too late. So she said to me she can finish it up out here, so let's see what she can do. All right. On the outside it's well done. On the corner and inside will be medium rare, and of course you can return for the rare portion of the meat. Anson is also very well versed in how to use a chainsaw.
The meat's that tough?
I give her the chainsaw, I give her a 300-pound block of ice. I give her a sketch of what I want to do, right? And I said to her, if you can do this, consider yourself an artiste. So let's see what you've done for me. Okay, very good. Those of you who don't know what it is, and I don't get too many who don't know what it is, it's self-explanatory, it's art. But one thing about this piece of this, we are not kindergarten kids, we are not high school kids, we are adults, except for you, right? So I ask you kindly not to put your tongue up against it. It is ice, it is real, don't put your tongue here. All right, very good. At the very end of the buffet table, we have a number of cakes, which Anson is so that she will be there to explain to you the variety we have at a later time. We ask you to refrain from starting at this end of the buffet. We'd like you to start at that end of the buffet. You will stop somewhere along here, make your way back to the seats. Once you finish your meal, you can return for the dessert section. We will be bringing coffee to your tables, those of you who like tea, and we'll ask the waiter or myself or my assistant Helena, and we'll get that for you. Enjoy your evening. One thing I must remind you, ladies and gentlemen, it is coming up to the festive season. Our roads outside are busy. Someone in the campus, someone in this room, someone on the streets will be the person directly in front of you or behind you. And I would like each and every one of you to get home safely to see your loved ones. Enjoy your family, enjoy the evening. Thank you very much.
Our next item on the agenda is our speaker. I'd like to call up Vice President Gary Boyle to introduce the speaker.
Here he is. Thank you, Mr. President. And again, as you're very wise, thanks, Gordon, and everything, all the chefs here at Algonquin. The meal was fantastic as always. And for the past 2 years, I've had the honor. Thanks. For the past 2 years, I've had the honor of planning this with Algonquin College. Hope you've enjoyed the meal. I really enjoyed. He had me here all day cutting onions. I have no idea how you can use all those onions, but he let me work in the kitchen today. Thanks, Gordon.
Is that where you were?
That's where I was. But Dr. René Racine obtained his PhD in astronomy in 1967 from the University of Toronto, where he later became professor from 1970 to 76. He then accepted a fellowship at the Université de Montréal to manage the construction and operation of Mont-Mégantic Observatory, and also helping with the expansion of the astronomy programs for the University of Montreal and Laval. He was also Chief Executive Director of the Canada-France-Hawaii Telescope from 1980 to 84, immediately after the inauguration of the world-class telescope. His research also includes star clusters, cosmological distances, and the improvement of telescope design and operation of direct imaging of extrasolar planets. He is also a Fellow of the Royal Society of Canada and an officer of the Ordre National du Québec. Here with this talk entitled The Quest for Extremely Large Telescopes, please welcome Dr. René Racine. I have two laser pointers in case one fails.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Well, thank you. It's hard to be eloquent after such a dinner.
Hope it works.
Good. Also, I saw so many marvelous astronomical photographs taken by some of your club members here that I'm a bit ashamed of what I'm going to show you, what I thought were pretty good images as well, but taken with multi-million-dollar telescopes. So I'm going to tell you about this quest for gigantic telescopes, something which has been going on for over 4 centuries. So this is an old presentation. I mean, I've lost track of how many times I've given it, you know. It's at least 10 years old, and I've updated it dozens of times. Last time was last night, of course, for this talk, because this is a very active and evolving situation. So in brief, I'll tell you why we want gigantic telescopes, and briefly review the history of the growth of telescopes over the centuries, and talk about technologies and the great telescopes of yesterday's and today's greats, and the dreams for tomorrow, including some delirium. And finally, the challenge, which I let you guess what it is, but it mostly translates as a dollar sign. Okay. To me, astronomical observatories are just beautiful, and that's their main quality. The CFH telescope on Mauna Kea, in this picture by Jean-Charles Cuyandre, an astronomer and talented photographer, gives you the impression that there's beauty and serenity, and there's more to observatories than doing research in the guts of the universe or extrasolar planets, but there is peace. And I think that this is one of the most inspiring things about astronomy, and one that touches more people than those very learned papers we publish in journals that no one reads. So we marvel at the night sky, and we're all amateur astronomers. I mean, I built my first telescope when I was 12. You see, you know. Didn't have a PhD quite yet. Just because I wanted to see what the crescent of Venus wanted to look like, and what the moon and the craters and the satellites of Jupiter. So this is one reason to build telescopes, just to see the beauty of the sky. And at my age now, I think that's the most important thing about astronomy. And that's why I love to come and talk to quote-unquote amateurs, because I'm an amateur, and what we do, what the professional astronomers like me do is really just to feed amateurs with things that they can tell hundreds of thousands of people. We only speak to half a dozen readers of our scientific papers. Now, we build telescopes for scientific reasons too, and there are two main reasons now, surprisingly enough. The key reason, as of the last decade or so, is to look at the nearest object we can think of, the extrasolar planets. And I'm not going to say too very much about this. I understand that René Doyon was here a couple of years ago, and of course he's the king of extrasolar planets in Canada and worldwide, and he's also one of my former students, so that's great. And then the most distant things, the cosmic evolution. I mean, how did it all begin? You know, okay. And that's why we build telescopes. Not only because they're pretty, because they help us answer these questions. Okay. So I'll say a few words about extrasolar planets. Apologies to all of you because you know all of this thing. Okay. Why are we interested in extrasolar planets? Well, of course, because we want to understand what the planets are all about. Right? But there is a more profound reason, I think. More profound reason, which I think was well couched in this French philosopher language. The eternal silence of infinite space scares me. Okay. I mean, are we alone? And Pascal himself thought about this in the mid-17th century. And this is really why we want to find out about the solar planets, the other planets. Not that we want to move there because the real estate here is too expensive or too polluted. Just because maybe there's someone out there. Is there chlorophyll on these planets? I mean, is there life? I think we all sense deep inside that this is important. I'm sorry to say that some people not far away from here don't sense that. Now, how do we do this? Well, there are three basic ways. The first one is the basic action-reaction. If you have a bright star, okay, which is swung around by a dark planet, as Disco Noir, you know, La Danse à la Ville shows, okay, center of gravity is fixed. Center of, okay. So the star goes around in a small orbit, and the planet goes in a big orbit because of lever equilibrium. Now, you don't see the planet because it's dark. But you see the star, so you see that the star is wobbling a little bit, sideways or back and forth in radial velocity. And that's how you find that there are planets around stars. And this first one was discovered by two young Swiss astronomers in 1995, and there's about 1,000 known so far stars that we know are orbited by planets. We don't know anything about the planets themselves, except the period, of course, but okay. So that's one way, action-reaction. A second way is to see a star eclipsed by a planet. It's a very partial eclipse. You know, a few hundredths of the light is masked by the disk of the planet, okay, by these transits here. Now, this is well within the reach of amateur astronomers. This light curve here, which has an amplitude of about 200th of a magnitude, was taken with a 10-inch telescope by a Finnish astronomer, amateur astronomers. Okay. So you can discover planets that way. Tells you if they come back, how long the eclipse is, and then something about the relative size of the planet and the star. It's useful. And then finally, and most importantly and directly image the planets. Planets are faint, black cloth, okay, and they're buried in the glare of the star. And now you can devise tricks to turn the star off, or almost turn it off, and then see it around here. And of course, this has been done once in 2008, after 14 years of work by a group of Canadian astronomers led by René Doyon and Christian Marois and David Lafrenière, whom I'm proud to say are all my students. Now, what do you see? Of course, this is predictable. You see these four objects, and you follow them with your fancy star turning off devices, and you can see what they do, and you see this. So this is a reconstruction of the orbits. Now, of course, projected into the future for over 100 or thousands of years. But the fact is that for HD 8779, we actually have been able to follow them for over 5 years now, over part of their orbits. So, now, it isn't easy to do that, as you can well imagine, to understand the planetary systems. And, of course, to find out if, after all, this silence of infinite space is eternal. Now, this is why we need gigantic telescope, because we have to see clear and sharp. Okay? Same thing with cosmic evolution. Cosmic evolution is looking back in time, distant in the universe, very far away in the universe, and then things get faint out there. We've known since 1935 that we knew nothing about 95% of what's in the universe, and then we've known since 1982 that there's dark matter, which makes up 20%, and this was a discovery made at the Canada-France-Hawaii telescope by our French colleague François and Monique Spitt. Okay, and we've known since 1988 that there's dark energy that makes up 75%. Okay. So we should be a bit humble, because we don't really know what 95% of the universe is about. We call it dark matter and dark energy, but we don't know. And we should be honest when we tell our students that we know about the universe. I mean, we know about 5% of the universe, especially the energy. Not surprising that the U.S. Department of Energy is funding telescopes to look at the dark energy. Who knows? It might be useful. So we have still to discover this. And again, to do this, we need gigantic telescope. Why? Because we need more light. Things are faint. So the light that you get, luminosity, is the diameter square, okay, the area, collecting area of the telescope. We need better resolution, because we see things we want to see things that are very small, planets around stars, structures of distant galaxies, and the like. Now, to do this from the ground, we need to correct atmospheric turbulence. To do this from space, you also need to use adaptive optics, because even space telescope optics are not perfect. And we need more contrast. We need to see faint things next to bright things, planets next to stars. And the contrast is also goes as a diameter square. So the global performance of a telescope is the product of the luminosity times the resolution times the contrast. And that goes as the 6th power of the telescope diameter, the aperture of the primary mirror or lens. So if you make a telescope 2 times larger, it is 64 times more powerful. That's been known forever, almost. And this is why telescopes have grown. To illustrate this, this is a simulation, of course, of the same image of a star field, same star field, scale of the increases with size here. 8-meter telescope in natural seeing, you see this blur, okay, in 600 seconds. If you take the Hubble Space Telescope, which is only 2.4 meter, takes you longer to get the same light, but you see sharper because you're in space. Okay. If you have diffraction limit on an 8-meter telescope, you will see this. This is far better than that. And if you make the telescope 30-meter diffraction minute, it takes you only 10 seconds to see this, whereas to see that took you 600 seconds. So this is a visual illustration of the benefits of having bigger, larger telescopes. This is the history of the telescope, from the days of Galileo with his 2-centimeter telescope in 1609 to today's Keck and large binocular telescope of 10-meter size. I could speak at great length about the details of this, but let's not. If you look at the biggest telescopes which have been successful, the crosses are the quote-unquote premature instruments. They were built, but they didn't work. Okay. You see that there is a steady growth over 4 centuries where the diameter of the largest telescope in the world doubles every 45 years. It's been like this since the early 17th century until the 20th century, the end of the 20th century. Okay. Now, these are projects for the future. Okay, and I'll zoom on this picture here. These are the gigantic telescope I'm going to talk to you about later. Look at this. So this is the last part of the 20th century, 1950 to about 2000. Those are in operation. You may recognize them, okay? The 2 Keck here, the LBT and the VLT and the 8 meters and all the like. And these are the projects of extremely large telescope. As I say, this presentation is 10 years old. Okay, when I first presented it in about 2000, this is what was the future was to hold. There were projects for a 100-meter telescope, and others for a 50-meter telescope, and then 30-meter telescope. Now, 2013, just about now, okay, November 16, 2012, is what the plans are. Some projects have simply disappeared. I mean, that thing has nothing here. This doesn't exist anymore. Others have shrunk, okay, a lot. Some have stuck in, some slight, but mostly in 10 years, the projected construction date has shifted by 10 years. I mean, there's been no progress in actually building these telescopes. I could stop here, but of course I won't because it'd be so dull. To give you an overview of this, okay, there were 9 large telescopes built in the 70s. Palomar is a bit of an exception here. 9, 4-meter class telescope. The next generation was built in the year 1998-2000. There were 17 of them, twice as many, okay, of 8 and 10-meter telescopes. Now, does that mean that the next generation, which are now being planned for the year 2020, there are going to be 35 of them? and they will be 30 meters across. Well, I hesitate to think so, but still, these are the dreams for tomorrow. Projects which have merged into one, others which have completely disappeared, and a couple which are plowing along. Okay, so basically, tomorrow's dream are made up of 3 telescopes. So let me show you pictures of these instruments of today and the past. Okay, I need to explain to you what makes it conceivable or not completely ludicrous to think we can build 4-meter telescope, 30-meter telescopes. Okay. You need special optics, active optics, segmented optics, adaptive optics, computer, which we didn't have 50 years ago, and very sophisticated enclosure to protect the image quality. And these are example. Active optics. This is the 8-meter primary mirror of the Gemini, one of the 2 Gemini telescope. It's 8 meter across, solid glass, but only 15 centimeter thick. Okay, because if it was 3 meter thick, you just couldn't support it and move it across the sky. So it's a bit like a piece of paper. Okay, and it has to be supported because it's very flexible by very many. There are, about 86 radial support and about 200 back support. Okay. So each time the telescope moves, all of these support are adjusted under computer control to keep the telescope in good optical shape. Now, if you want to go much bigger than 8 or 10 meter, you got to segment the mirror in smaller hexagonal pieces, and this is a picture of the segmented optics of the TMT projects. Now here you have something like 400 little tiles, okay, much like a bathroom floor, each one being individually supported and bent into shape by a special support. Now you can do that. I mean, so each of these tiles is 1.4 meter across for the 30 meter and 5 centimeter thick, and it needs to be supported very sophisticated way. Now, mostly, if you really want to get the most of large telescopes or of any telescope, you need to correct for seeing. I mean, a star out in space emit wavefronts which are strictly very flat. And if it wasn't for the Earth atmosphere and the imperfection in the optics, but mostly the Earth atmosphere, you would have a very sharp image of the star. But you don't. You have a blur. The astronomers get a blur. Now, there's a way to correct this, and this is the adaptive optics. And I'll show you a view which illustrates how adaptive optics work, how you correct these wiggly, messy wavefront into a proper, nearly space quality wavefront. Now this is a view of, this of course is a simulation. It's a view of Mauna Kea, and you see the Gemini telescope at the summit here. Okay. It's an excellent site. It's 4,200 meters above sea level. The air is dry, and the atmospheric turbulence is not too bad. So we approach, and here we see the site here, and the telescope, and its funny shaped dome, which is meant to open up as if there was no dome around, so that the free night air flows through the telescope. Canadian design. This was done by Dynamic Structure Limited of Port Coquitlam in British Columbia. So it opens up, the gates open and on the side. So it's like if the telescope had no local seeing. Otherwise, it gets warm inside the dome because people have coffee cups and stuff like this. And messes up the image quality. So I'm not going to explain this because you all understand this perfectly well. The starlight comes in from the sky, has the primary mirror, the secondary mirror, and then back through the hole in the primary mirror onto an instrument, this box, which is the magic adaptive optics box. It's a detector, there's a CCD, and you see the light comes from the telescope and is focused. Focused here, and there's a lens that makes the beam parallel again, and then onto another mirror, and into another lens which will refocus it here. So nothing moves so far. And it comes on the CCD, it's integrated, and the signal is sent to computer memory, and you get this wiggly picture of a star. This is the typical seeing agitation of the atmosphere, which is varying all the time, okay? Why you get this? You get this because the wavefront from the star have been distorted by the atmosphere, okay? And they're no longer flat. You see, they look like potato chips, okay? They don't even look like Pringles, you know. They're different one after the other. They're like Frito-Lays, okay? Okay? And of course, understandably, as you get these distorted and variable wavefront onto your camera, the image is wiggly and broken into bits and pieces. Now, the trick here is that you let some of the light through this mirror onto a wavefront sensor. It tells you, it measures how much wiggliness there is, irregularity in the wavefront. And it sends a signal to a deformable mirror. There you see? Now, if you close the loop, the deformable mirror sees the signal from the previous potato chips and takes a shape such that after reflection, the wavefront will be flat again. And you'll see this now. See? I should go back a little bit. Make you see this a bit better. The loop is, now you close the loop. And now you see, here the potato chip is concave here, but the mirror is convex. And when the potato chip is reflected on the mirror, it'll be flat. As if there had been no distortion, as if there had been no atmosphere, as if the telescope was in space. There. Works great. There are some technological details that I'm glossing over here, but still, when you do this, then, ta-da! Your image is now sharp, immovable, immobile, and your telescope, although it's on the ground, performs as if it was in space. Okay. Play again? No, you've seen it again. I've seen it enough. Okay. So this is adaptive optics, and it is now an important part of all new telescope design. Okay. And it's used on today's great telescopes. All telescopes have it now. Gemini North, you recognize this is it in the real, in flash here, not just this cartoon that you've seen. There's 7 countries working together to make this thing happen. You can see here the shadow of Mauna Kea at sunrise. This is looking west here in the upper, in the stratosphere. It's beautiful, okay? And it produces nice images. Just to rub it in again, 4 planets, gamma ray bursts at 30 billion light years away, Saturn and Titan. Although, I must say that this is no better than the photograph that you've seen from your member here. Although it's taken with an 8-meter telescope and adaptive optics, so that's sometimes you wonder if it's worth. This is the same planetary nebula seen by the Gemini telescope and the Hubble Space Telescope. And you will notice that the Gemini telescope is far smoother, is less grainy than the Hubble, because an 8-meter has more light and gives better, sharper, smoother images than a 2.4-meter. You will also notice that the stars are at least as, if no sharper, with Gemini than with Hubble, because an 8-meter has a diffraction limit which is 4 times or 3 times smaller than a 2.5-meter telescope. So when you see all the beautiful results published by NASA with the Hubble Space Telescope, which are truly beautiful, keep in mind that the reason you're very impressed is because NASA's budget for public relations is far larger than Gemini's budget. Subaru, Japanese telescope, 8-meter, Mauna Kea, Hawaii, like Gemini, okay? 2 10-meter telescope, Keck, which at this time are among the largest in operation. On Mauna Kea, Hawaii, everyone, this is almost the mecca of astronomy. And Keck produced splendid images in the infrared. You can see the center of the Milky Way. I grant you it's not very impressive, but this little butt thing here is the center of the Milky Way. You can see protoplanetary nebula. You can see storms on satellite of Saturn. Beautiful. Europe, not to be outdone, of course, has 4 8-meter telescopes in the European Very Large Telescope projects in Chile. Okay. I was in Chile when the first unit of the, in 1998, when the first unit of the 8-meter ESO telescope was saw first light. I was at the American Observatory in Cerro Tololo. And the reaction of the American colleagues were just very impressive. They realized that for the first time in 150 years, the largest telescope in the world was not an American telescope. VLT, nice images. We had a transit of Venus here, but here's a transit of Mercury, the VLT, volcanoes and Io, colliding galaxies. These telescopes produce fantastic images. Now, of course, tomorrow. Well, first and foremost, in space. I'm glad to see that we have so many people here from DMA, ComDev, Space Telescope, Canadian Space Agency. The James Webb Space Telescope, 6.5-meter telescope, will replace HST. And here, again, here's a clue to what's going on. The first time I had this slide, of course, it was supposed to be in 2012, that is last year, basically. Now it's 2018, and if you ask people, it may be a bit later. It's just difficult. This is a comparison of the JWST, folded segmented mirror, and HST, the same scale. You see, the people are the same height here and as they are here, but the telescope is much bigger. This is going to be a fantastic instrument, and this is all I will say about it because I'm not personally involved in it. On the ground, of course, there are plans for more. The Americans will build the Large Synaptic Survey telescopes. Be ready. They need you. Okay. This is the first large telescopes for amateur. Okay. It's an 8.4 meter telescope. It has a 3-degree field diameter. Okay. This is a mock-up of the mosaic of 4K by 4K CCDs. Okay. There are 3,000 million pixels in this CCD. Telescope will reach magnitude 24 in 10 seconds. Okay. It will cover the whole sky each night. Okay. It produces 30 terabytes of data per night. This is equivalent to 3,000 CDs. The only way we know so far how to take this data from the mountain is a mule train. Okay. But there are some high-speed connections being planned. And mostly it needs an army of image analyzers. Okay. So the data will be open to the public. When you wake up in the morning, you can log it, lsst.org, and then you can download the images taken last night of the sky, pick up the field that it is interest to you to look for, God knows what, a comet, an asteroid, and study it and then report. And you can download the software required to do the analysis. That's the plan. That's the plan.
How are they planning on storing all that data?
One of the main sponsors of LSST is Google. Google has a large farm of disk and computers. Yeah.
Thank you.
The other sponsor is the Department of Energy, because they're going to look at the dark energy aspect, the distortion of metrics in space and the like. Yeah. It won't be up for another decade or so. No, by then, terabyte USB keys will be available at Walmart. So. Giant Magellan Telescope. This is a U.S. project again. Carnegie Institution leading it. 7 8-meter telescope, equivalent to a 24-meter telescope, or a 22-meter in equivalent area. That's one. And then, closer to us, of course, there was this project in the early 2000s of Canada to build a 20-meter, and there were studies and models made. Okay. And then Californian people, Caltech, UC, and the like, wanted to build a 30-meter telescope, and then the U.S. National Observatory in Tucson, Arizona, wanted to build a giant segmented mirror telescope, also 30-meter. Now that was mini telescope for North America, and it was decided in 2003, in fact, to join the three projects into what is now called the 30-meter telescope projects. The very large optical telescope Canadian and the California, and the giant segmented mirror became the TMTs. So these are the partners now of TMT. Acura, which is the Association of Canadian University for Research in Astronomy, Canada. Caltech, University of California, National Observatory of Japan, National U.S. Astronomical Observatory, China, and India. So there's 7 partners which have been developing the project. Okay. Here's an old poster dating 2005. I just show this here because you cannot read it. TMT grant acknowledged financial support from the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation. Gordon Moore, of course, is the founder and the majority shareholder of Intel. He basically invented the microchips. And he's a former student of Caltech. So he committed $300 million to this project. And then other funds comes from the Canada Foundation for Innovation, the Ontario Ministry of Research and Innovation, the Natural Science and Engineering Research Council of Canada, okay, the British Columbia Knowledge Development Fund, the Association of University for Research in Astronomy, and the National Science Foundation, the National Research Council of Canada, and the US NSF. So you see that Canada played a very preeminent role at the beginning of TMT in the early 2000s.
We had a presentation here on TMT a couple years ago. We had a presentation here on TMT. We had some of the speakers speak about it. Yeah.
Who spoke about TMT? It must be Luc Simard.
That's
Yeah, okay. Right. I don't know if Luc gave you all the budget, Mr. Khan. I'm telling you about politics. Luc is great at talking about the science, which is important but easy. So the thorn in the project is the budget. The design and development is wrapped up now. We're ready to build. Shovel ready, as they said in the stimulus years. Okay, so we brought that to Jim Prentice, and he didn't buy it, But anyway, so we've contributed 30 million also, and these are the contributions from the various partners. So we spent 232 million, 2010 dollars, in doing the design, just the design, not welding steel or digging holes, pouring concrete. And the project for construction is the following, okay? So if someone wants to know how much each country would need to contribute to buy its share of this, well, these are the numbers here. Canada would have about 20% of the observing time at that rate here. And there's still 1.2 billion missing for construction. None of that has been approved except India. India has approved the money, and Caltech and UC have the money. But Canada, Japan, China, and the US federal agencies have not contributed. So that's 1.2 billion net. So the overall cost of the project is 1.4 billion, $1,400 million. Interestingly enough, it's been the same number since 2003. I mean, it's gone over reviews and costing estimates. It's very solid. Now, of course, the design has evolved, getting more and more complicated and more detail. That's what the 30 telescope looks like. And you see a little man here with his socks. I hope he doesn't have spikes here. Threading lightly on the primary mirror. Artist conception. Beyond me why artists think that telescope look at the horizon when the sky is cloudy. But still, it's beautiful. Okay. One of Canadian contribution, the major one first, is the enclosure. And this is what it would look like. You've seen sketch of it. I'll show you how it works. It has this calotte type, which is copied from a French version of an observatory in Pic du Midi, which never worked. Come on. Ha. Yeah, sure, go ahead. Okay. So here's the mock-up or the illustration of the TMT building on Mauna Kea. And there's no shutter, there's a cap. And the cap can be brought to any elevation by rotating about this inclined track here. And the whole thing can rotate in azimuth about this track. So I'll show you how that goes. It takes only a few seconds. Go for it. There you see the cap is lifted and is hidden inside the dome. Then the whole thing can turn. Now the reason for this, of course, is to protect the telescope very well from the wind. One of the big engineering challenge with these large structure is that they will flap in the wind. And at places like Mauna Kea, sometimes the wind is howling at 60 knots, 70 knots, you see. Okay, so this is the Canadian design to solve that problem. There is, on the other hand, lots of ventilation gate to make sure that you can clean the air and prevent the coffee cups from warming up the seeing. So there you go. It's pretty amusing. Let's do it again, okay?
I think Luke showed us something like that. Luke,
I'm sure he must have had the same clip. Yeah, we all have the same clips here. You need not invite all of us. Just one is enough. Okay. Okay, get lost here. Okay. Now, these are dreams. Why stop there? Why stop there? French wouldn't stop there anyway, right? So, here is the delirium that came out of Europe in 2002 to build a 100-meter telescope, an overwhelmingly large Howell telescope. Overwhelmingly means, I think, although English is not my native language, means that it can never be surpassed. After 150 years, we don't want to lose the leadership again. Okay. Well, it was a good idea. I mean, you can dream about it. You know, Howell has inspired half a generation of astronomers. I'm not saying engineers, astronomers. Now, this, of course, is now 8-year-old. And I'm sure that by looking at this structure, all of you are wondering whether it could, in fact, ever be built. Of course, it cannot. Okay. And reality has to catch up with astronomers eventually. And in 2006, 2 years later, after this was produced, here's a press release which appeared in New Scientist that Europe was to build a mirror up to 60 meter, but it could range between 30 and 60 meter. Okay. All show that the concept, a review of all showed that the concept would be too risky and would take too long to build. And I remember participating in all these discussions, and indeed. But I'm sure that this video, and I apologize for not having downloaded the iRes version, which is, terabytes. Sure that this video has inspired a whole generation of astronomers and of engineers and technologists, and one day, the dream is still there. The plan now is to build something smaller, and as it was decided in 2007 that it should be a 42-meter telescope. Why 42 meter? It turns out that 42 meters square is exactly twice 30 meters square. So that this telescope will be twice as larger in collecting area as the American 30-meter telescope, which is the competition. Or as my friend in France and Germany like to say this is the co-opetition. Co-opetition, not competition, co-opetition. Okay. Another reason why Guy Monet, who was a former director of CFHT and who was in charge of the 30-meter, of the ELT project at the time, is said that 42-meter, because those of you who are old enough to have read the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Adams would remember that 42 is the answer to the most important question of humanity. If you haven't read the book, then you should. It turns out that now it's 36 meter because money and all sorts of things. So the competition now is 36 meter versus, or the collaboration versus 30 meter for the US-Canada project. To be fair, of course, they've also updated their video. And I'll show you the current ESO video before it was downsized to 32 meter, to 36 meter. It's a pretty good video and better music this time, I think. Also better resolution. There are some key phrases in here that you will pay attention, because I'll show you the equivalent video on the 30-meter size later. Well, we don't have to go ahead yet, but still, it was expected in 2010. Notice the difference in concept of the enclosure from the TMT. Anybody's guess as to which one will work best. So, of course, after this video, TMT produces their own video. Yeah. There's a bit of a competition here. And you will notice in places the style is different. Music is less aggressive. But they claim the same thing. I'm not going to play all of this one because it's a bit long and repetitive with what I've already said. But
why are we here? What's the origin of life? Why the properties of the universe are the way it is still a quest.
The 30-meter telescope will allow us to understand each and every one of these questions.
The primary mirror is 30 meters across. So that's 3 times the diameter of the current largest telescopes.
At that scale, it's virtually impossible to build a single piece of glass. So the way we will achieve this size is through segments.
TMT builds on the heritage of the Keck Observatory. The Keck telescope was the first segmented mirror. The mirror itself is made up of 36 segments that all lock together to make a single surface.
30 meters is roughly 400 segments. It's big enough that you can make the next leap in terms of our understanding of the physical universe, while not being so big as to be unbuildable.
We have chosen the summit of Mauna Kea as the site for the 30-meter telescope. This followed a 5-year campaign of testing sites all around the world.
so there you have it. Again, the most powerful telescope. Okay, well, I'll wrap this up now. We've seen enough to get excited or sleepy. I'll end up on the usual dullish thing and the challenges. Situation in Canada is the following. In 2009, spring 2009, we were told by the minister that they will study proposals, and they've invited proposals for a 25% participation of Canada in TMT. In this. You know, as of today, we haven't heard from them. No decision. Industry Canada has launched a study of the situation of astronomy in Canada. There's a very good report on this. It says that Canadian astronomy is world leading. Canadian astronomers are world class, and I'm mucking people on the hill here.
No.
But it's, you know, it's difficult. Difficult because there's money involved, and a lot of money now. It used to be where a private donor could fund a telescope, David Dunlap, Rockefeller, but now even Gordon Moore and Bill Gates can't afford to fund telescopes. Just to give you an idea here of some of the figures, these are all in 2000, Yeah, these are in cost dollars. I mean, Megantic, our small 1.6 meter telescope, cost $1 million in 1979. CFHT cost $30 million at 3.6 meter. And Gemini, each one of them costs costs $100 million. And the TMT will cost $1,400 million. This is getting respectable. Okay. HST has cost, of course, $6,000 million. And it's a 2.4 meter telescope. So when people ask me, well, why don't you put your telescope into space? Well, that's the answer. I mean, the GDP of the United States couldn't put a 30-meter telescope in space. Unless ComDev comes up with some very clever ideas. An interesting thing is that if you look at the cost in $2,000 of telescopes that we know of, from 1 to about 5 meter telescopes crept at a rate of about, as a power 2.5 or 2.7 of the aperture. And then over 5 meter, going to 10 meter, and then eventually 30 meter, we use new technology, thin mirror, active optics, and that allows to break the cost curve. Now you can tell me none of these telescopes have ever been built and paid for. That's right. But I don't think we're off by a factor of 10 in cost estimates, as we will have to be on the previous curve. Now, we may be on a factor of 2, but I live in Montreal, so, you know, what's factor of 2 in cost is no. Okay. Another...
The Mafia have expressed any interest in telescopes over there?
Who?
Lots of money. The Mafia in Montreal.
Yeah, I know. And they're also very religious, maybe. Don't you have them in Ottawa and Toronto?
Yeah, they're on the hill.
They're all on the hill, right? Another interesting thing, which I concocted, which I uncover, is that during the 20th century, nations increasingly invest a larger fraction of their GDP in telescope cost. Okay? And in fact, you can see here, I'm taking, okay, this is, well, there was the DAO telescope, DDO, and the like, so on and so forth, okay, until CFHT in 1980, and so on. Okay. So that's interesting that Canada and European nations and the US are spending increasingly more of their gross domestic product, of their wealth, for astronomy. Now, it's still a small fraction. We're at the level of 100 to 1%, you know. Telescopes are costing 1,000 times less than healthcare, just to give a reference. But still, it's increasing. It has ups and downs, and it's been mostly down since 2006, but that's good. That's good. I can understand that. Now, if you're really bold, you'd extrapolate this thing backward to 1609 and to in the future, and you get this ridiculous or interesting thing. If you extrapolate the crescent curve of growth here, you actually come up to pretty close what the Galilean telescope represented in 1609 as part of the GDP of Europe of the time. It takes a lot of research to see this, but I've done it, you know. I mean, God, with the internet, you have access to so much things. So this is great. So it's been going up for 4 centuries at about the same rate. Now, if you keep going at that rate, in the year 2500, the whole wealth of the world will be spent on space projects.
Yeah.
Now, this is a bit of an extrapolation here. But come to think of it, I mean, in 500 years, wouldn't it make sense that we'd be more concerned about space than we're concerned about Earth? None of us would be here to prove me wrong, of course, but anyway, that's a thought. So you can make your bets. Okay. As I said, this is an old view. When will we have the 30 meters? 2025? 2030? My bet is 2025 now, but okay.
We'll put the video in a time capsule and see if you...
One of the old questions I had is, who will see the first exoplanets? We now have the answer, Canadians. Okay. Who will identify dark matter? Any of us will see Howl, or our children, or in my case, grandchildren. Will there ever be such thing as Howl? Is there a limit to what we can build, or to what we can afford? To help answer this question, for instance, recollect this here. The current projects for the Large Telescope are getting closer to the projections of the past than they did 12 years ago. Maybe it'll be another 20 years before we see a 30-meter telescope. I don't know. We'll see. We'll find out sometime. Vamos a ver, as they say in Chile. We'll find out. We'll know. So thank you. Thank you.
You can drop the cost if you get it made in China.
No. In fact, the Canadian company who is the key bidder, and in fact the reserve bidder for the enclosure, has struck a deal with a Chinese steel corporation to do this. And Chinese know who their competitors are and how much they cost.
This seems an awful lot like boys and their toys. We got to build the biggest building on Earth, we got to build the biggest bridge, yet it's still cheaper to cross the river by boat. And I'm just wondering, like, in the age of electricity, before Tesla, if you wanted to transmit your electricity further, you needed bigger and bigger cable. So I'm just wondering, is there a Tesla around the corner? Like, do we need to continuously build bigger?
Well, you can change technology, of course, and of course, I'm only giving you here the view or the aspect of the ground-based optical telescopes. Radio astronomy is a different story. But the need to increase the size is based on pretty fundamental physics. I mean, the diffraction limit is the wavelength divided by the diameter. So if you want to see sharper, you need to increase the diameter somehow. It can be a filled aperture, as these telescopes are. It can be a distributed apertures, like interferometers are. And both have been tried, and the filled aperture is more successful for many reasons. But, I mean, so you want to increase the... you want to see fainter things because you want to see at the edge of the universe, and 13 billion light years away is pretty far. So you need to collect light, and that speaks in favor of filled aperture rather than distributed aperture and the like. So it's been going on for 4 centuries, since Galileo and Lippershey in early 1600 built their telescopes, and I think it'll only stop when the geopolitical or economic climate makes it impossible to grow anymore. I'm not sure we've reached that point yet, because we can build things like the LHC, which are enormously more expensive than a 30-meter telescope. But nations have to get together to do that. I mean, LHC is a world project. The Square Kilometer Array of radio telescopes is a world project. These small 30, 40-meter telescopes are not quite world projects. They're continental projects, US, Canada, maybe transcontinental or Pacific Rim projects. Howell would have been a world project and would have succeeded in being one if it had been proven feasible, but it just isn't feasible with current technology. And that's why I'm asking these two last questions. I mean, how much can we afford? And can we build anything? Because there are, I believe, good rationale to build bigger. There are also good rationales for other types of research instruments, including smaller telescopes. And in the late 80s, I was preaching for a small 3-meter class telescope at a superb site, which would have a better resolution than the Hubble Space Telescope, which at the time was not yet launched. But I was overruled by people who said that, you know, quantity has a quality of its own. Yes.
So what was the key flaw for the OWL that made it
Okay.
impossible to build?
It, well, unstated, but certainly fundamental was the cost. Okay. Although it was never costed in detail, but by using any scaling law, it was beyond what Europe could afford. And these were not days where Europe would work with the US because they wanted to be overwhelming. Technologically, it was demonstrated that the two-mirror system that they needed, both had to be active and one had to be adaptive. And there's no way you could control them unambiguously unless you make some very theoretical assumptions about the nature of turbulence. So it was too big. Because even the secondary mirror, which was 25 meters in diameter, the secondary mirror, had to be adaptive. So, but mostly, as stated in the press release of ASO, which I've shown you, it was too risky and will take too long to build. And in the meantime, the Americans will build their own, and Europe will no longer have the largest telescope in the world. And this was the rationale.
There's two large telescopes coming up then, TMT and the German one in Chile, the 36 meter.
Yeah, the 36, yeah.
Well, it looks to me like I had an email from the European Southern Observatory.
Yes.
Showing they're already pouring concrete and
yeah.
stuff like that for the 36 meter. Well, the other one is only a thought, isn't it? The TMT. There's
no.
Pouring of concrete or anything.
No, they're not pouring concrete because we don't have a building permit yet. But we have a lease. We have a lease on. I mean, they have a lease. I say we because I've been involved with this. They have a lease on Mauna Kea on the north side of the summit cones. They have a permission to build a road, and they will start doing that. Now there is a third telescope, which is the Giant Magellan Telescope, GMT, which has also been pouring concrete in Chile and on Las Campanas, the 24-meter telescope. So, yes, so ASO is pouring concrete and on Cerro Armazones in the northern desert of Chile, Atacama Desert. Concrete is cheap.
No, it sounds to me like the 36 meter will be up before the other two. If the things go at the same rate.
Okay, it depends. Technically, they are equally ready. So the one who will be first built is the one who will be first funded. None neither is funded at this time. As I say, I mean, you can spend a few $100,000 and rent a bulldozer and pour concrete and it looks good on the press release. But you cannot build a 36-meter with a few $1,000s. Yes?
What's your opinion? We now have X-ray telescopes.
Yes.
We've got the super radio telescopes, infrared. These are optical telescopes.
These are optical, yeah. Optical infrared, yes.
So in your opinion, what are we going to get more information from?
Yeah.
Optical or from the other areas of the spectrum?
Well, an answer to this is an analogy. Suppose you live on a beautiful side on a mountain or a lakeside, and you have a house with many windows, but you decided to open only one window. Shouldn't you open all the windows and benefit from the view? And it's the same thing in astronomy. I mean, these wavelengths have access to different windows in the universe, on electromagnetic radiation for radio astronomies, on nuclear reactions for X-ray and gamma ray astronomy, on thermal emission for optical and near infrared. So these are different windows, and the information is complementary. Things have changed greatly even in my short life as an astronomer. Nowadays, I mean, when I was a student, there were optical astronomers and radio astronomers and space astronomers, and no more. They are astronomers. And astronomers use space and radio and optical facilities to solve a problem which they can tackle from many angles and then better find the solution. So the analogy with the windows in the house. Yes?
It's been said that to build some of these larger telescopes, a whole series of much smaller telescopes, like CFHT, even the Hale telescope, will have to close.
Yeah.
Is the trade-off worth it to close a wide variety of productive instruments?
Yeah.
Build one?
Yeah. So instead of building a 30-meter telescope, you can build a 10-meter telescope, let's say, which have the same collecting area. Okay. The answer to your question is, well, it'll be more expensive to build more small telescopes than one big one. More expensive financially because you have to operate 10 telescopes.
Actually, what I really mean is that existing facilities like the Hale, CFHT, even Kitt Peak and other observatories like that will have to close in order to finance ongoing costs and construction costs.
Yes. Yes.
Is the trade-off worth it?
That's a very good question. And it's very unfortunate that they will have to close, because the cost of operating the CFH telescope, for instance, which is an excellent telescope, outstanding, okay, is a minute fraction of what it'll cost to operate the 30-meter telescope. The only reason why we will have to close the CFHT to have the 30-meter funded is because some people somewhere in this country want to see blood on the floor to believe that you really want it. This is the only reason. It makes no scientific, in fact, it's a great scientific cost. It makes no financial sense. It's costing Canada $3 million to operate the CFH telescope a year. $3 million. Staff of 25. Okay? There'll be 250 people working on the TMT. It'll be 10 times, 20 times more expensive. I mean, but you've got to shut it down. Maybe it'll do 20 times more science, I don't know. But it's this blood on the floor or on the table that people here want to see. Yes?
You see these large telescopes, you see the large telescope, but really they're just light buckets. what's important are the instrumentation that are affixed to these. And I presume these prices that you quoted, the cost you quoted, include the instrumentation, which has not yet been developed or even conceived of in some of these cases. Make these discoveries. It's really, so what we're looking at here are really the most optimistic cost numbers because we really haven't incorporated the development of new instrumentation to equal the capability of these scopes.
Yeah, that's a good point. I've only talked about the telescopes here, but the budget that I've shown include instrumentation. And it's true that auxiliary instruments like cameras, spectrographs, what have you, are fully as important as the telescope itself. I mean, we're going to put the eye at the eyepiece and make a little drawing, see. But on the other hand, they're not just light bucket. There has been a school of thought where why do you bother having all these highly polished, very high quality optical surfaces? Why don't you just put a heap of junk, glass and steel, and as many actuators and computer control you want and make a telescope out of it? If you figure out the trade-off, you better start off with a reasonably good telescope. But instrumentation are very important, and well, I'm sure that if Luc Simard was here, he must have talked to you about the instruments, the adaptive optics, the spectrographs, and the like. So they go together.
Okay, we're going to have to hold the questions for now. Dr. Racine will be around till 3 in the morning to answer other questions.
3 in the morning, yeah, sure.
His thing in town. As customary, Dr. Racine, we always like to give a parting gift for our guest speaker. You had a great illustrious career. I met you back in the early 80s back in Mount Megantic, and it snowed, so I couldn't use a telescope.
Still does.
Still does. Even in June? Even in June?
I've seen snow every month of the year.
Really? Wow. It's amazing. It's amazing. But thank you again for making our night very special. And
thank you
talking
very
about
much.
our appreciation.
I should say that I've seen snow every month of the year in Hawaii too.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
But there you can take.
Wow.
Inscription is in the back too. It's an actual meteorite from one of our members.
Okay.
Yes, it was found in Russia in 1947.
Yes, I know this one.
Thank
you very much.
It's an iron meteor. So.
Thank you very much.
A funny story too, last year we had David Saint-Jacques, the astronaut, and who was David Saint-Jacques? One of his previous students. So Dr. Racine really reads the real good people for sure.
How about David saw the light and he went to NASA?
Oh, okay. Well, at least he went somewhere. Excellent, excellent. So now it's time to give away some bling, so please get out your door prize tickets. And
I think we're going to go for awards first.
the awards? I didn't say that. Hang on to your tickets, awards. I stand corrected. See, that's why I'm not in charge yet. Yet. Take it away, Mr. President.
Sorry, Gary. So, what's our next slide here? We have, we're going to give out awards now. So the next item up for the agenda is the Paul Commission 2012 Observer of the Year. So I'll ask Paul Cloninger to come up and award the award.
Thanks, Al. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed themselves tonight. Good dinner, good company, good conversation, good talk. And now for the goodies, including the awards. Our first one, underneath there. Excellent. Good God, they're even in order. Look at that. Our first award is the Paul Commission Observer of the Year Award. And being an active observer myself and having the chance to talk to a lot of people that are actively involved in this, I know that there's a lot of dedication in the ranks of the observers that we have in the Ottawa chapter. But one person really stood out. I'm not sure if he's here today. I haven't seen him. Not here today. Okay, but one person really stood out in terms of the amount of effort that he's put into recording his observations, In many ways, he reminds me of observers of days gone by in terms of keeping very detailed notes of things that he's observed and things that he's done. And so I have to, it's my pleasure, and I wish he was here, my pleasure to award Gordon Webster with the Observer of the Year Award. Here we go. And Julia, that's right. So we'll have to, hopefully Gordon will be at the next meeting in 2 weeks, and we'll present him his award. Don't throw up the next slide just yet. Am I going to do the next one? Are we up on the next one? Okay. And I assume nobody's let the cat out of the bag here. My next award to present is, this was a tough one. This one was for Presentation of the Year. And in my year as chair, I've had the privilege of listening to many great talks. I know many of you have partaken in those as well, and we've been engaged by some very knowledgeable people, some very dedicated people that have put a lot of work into their presentation, and some surprising talks as well. So it was a real toss-up for us to decide what the best presentation was, because it really depends on how you define best. There are many different definitions. For this year, we had a look at what we had in terms of the talks in front of us there, and one stood out for me just in terms of what it took to put this talk together and what it took to deliver this talk, because this talk was I found rather special. It hit a chord with me as well from my early years of observing, and I guess without further ado, I should mention that the award for the best presentation of the year goes to Nicholas Zuger for his presentation on My Astronomy Beginnings. Congratulations. Thank you, Gary.
I think my dad wants to take one photo.
Yes, absolutely. Get it?
Thank you.
Great.
I think, yes. As I said, I think, you know, we've seen a lot of really high quality presentations this year, and what struck me with Nicholas's presentation was that a young man like that standing up in front of 150 battle-hardened observers, critical people, shows a lot of spirit, a lot of guts to stand up there and give a very personal account of what you've done with astronomy and how you got into it. And my own feeling is that we haven't heard the last from you, Nicholas. So keep on keeping on, and we hope to see more presentations from you going forward. Thank you.
Okay, so next we have, let's see.
If anyone wants to see that presentation, it's available in the library on DVD.
The next presentation is for the Astronauts Article of the Year. Now, are Astronauts editors here? Any of our editors? We've had a bit of a handover this year. Drew or Janet? Paul, you want to? No. Okay. We've had a bit of a handover in our Astronauts, which is our publication, monthly publication of our center, and it was difficult to pick out an Astronauts Article of the Year because we had a bit of a lull in the year when we didn't have very many astronauts, unfortunately. But there was one member that stood out, and so this award goes more to a body of work this year and dedication to supporting astronauts and continuing to put forward useful information for our members, and really supports the reason that we have astronauts. So I'll make the presentation this year. The Astronauts Article of the Year goes to Estelle Rother for continuing to do the minutes of our meetings.
I guess you better get the
next one does.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Estelle, for all your good work. Okay, so what's next on our agenda? There's that again. Okay, membership recognition. So this is fun. As we're coming to the end of this year, we've been giving out membership pins to recognize loyal members of the Ottawa Centre. And this gives you an idea of the membership pins that we've given out. And you can see that we've had some members for quite some time. And as a new year rolls around, of course, we have people that get new pins. So I'd like to give out some pins to some of our members of long standing to recognize their many years of loyal service to the club. So 50 years. Art Fraser. Is Art here? Congratulations, Art. It's a few in the proud.
Okay, thank you.
Wow, that's great.
She gets half a pin.
New 40-year members. Rick Wagner. Congratulations. Come on. And Lou Cox. I've already sent Lou his pin. 30-year members. Derek McLeod. Derek? Not here this evening. Congratulations to Derek McLeod. 20 years. Stephen Nurse. Ex-treasurer. No. And council member. And youth members. Are any of our new youth members here? We've been giving out pins for some of our youth members. I think we've already given Nicholas his pin. Okay. Well, we'll give those out hopefully at the December meeting. So thank you very much for all of your loyal membership years. And now, Gary, the floor is yours.
I can give you some bling. Thank you, thank you. As you can see, we have a smorgasbord full of prizes. Your chances of winning are 1 in 2.60869565. Please, nobody leave, or I'll have to recalculate. So I'll ask our illustrious guest, Dr. Rainer Racine, to call us the first number. And there's no particular order. Whatever you want to grab, grab.
You have to read the numbers, right?
Please.
Why are that too optic? 051.
Yep, okay. I'll volunteer. Thank you. As you can see over here, we have a list of all the contributors of the 24 prizes. And while you're waiting, can you pick an air ticket, please?
Absolutely.
And of course, I'm number 1 and number 2. Sorry, I mean, I'm number 2. Debbie's number 1. Save myself in that one, eh? 013, lucky 13. Yes, it's Joe. You. Okay. Number 23. 23. Barry. The game I like to play is when I announce a number, you tell me what the messy object is. Thank you. Number 29. 29. What is it? It's an open cluster. John. It's up in Cygnus. 29 singles. Thank you very much. And next winning number is... Thank you. Number 4. M4. There we go. What kind of object is M4? What constellation? Scorpius. Right on.
Oh, do you need my go? Oh, my God.
It's okay. It's okay. Here. I trust you. I'll just take it back. And we have M12. Number 12. So just pick out whatever object you want. Number 12. There has to be number 12. Joe's wife. Okay, Joe, what do you want her to pick? You should come up here and... Oh, so he is. Go! She doesn't know what she's going to pick. Go! You tell what you want. Okay. Thank you. Next one number is? 28. Number 28. Nobody wants? Nobody has 28?
That's probably ours, but Deborah left it at the back, the ladies' room. We have 27 if that counts.
Could have been 26. I have paperwork in you guys. Yeah, it's Deborah. Come on up, Deb. Come on up, 28. I think I made a list there. Good thing I made the list.
Good thinking.
Hey, you want to pick a winner?
Okay. I can't read, so you'll...
No, gonna have to do it. Thank you. Number 24. Do 4. Do 4, eh?
No.
Like how the spouse will go, I don't know what to get. Just come up with the husbands then. So there he is going to come up. Thank you very much. Number 52. Hey. Okay, Paul, come up with her. It's a family affair. Okay, thank you. Number 43. 43. Mr. Baker.
Demarans Nebula.
That's it. Pick a winning number, please.
Oh, sorry, I just get handed.
Oh, yeah, but pick one for the next.
Oh, right, yes. Let's mix it up.
Let's mix it up.
I'm a statistician. I like randomness.
Number 14. 14. Oh, way in the back. Here we go. Laser pointer. Okay, thank you. If you want to pick another ticket. Super duper, thank you. Number 59. 59. Almost, yes.
I never would.
Oh, yeah, you get a bonus.
There we go. There you go, sir. And thanks, Brian, for the great the moon lamp there on the top. I think it's gone already. Is it gone? Who got the moon lamp?
I did. I have nieces.
Ah, there we go. Yeah, right. You're going to give it to them, right? 22. Number 22. 22. Rick.
That's light up.
Yeah, they're LED caps. They actually light up with LEDs in front of those baseball caps. Want to pick winner? 56. 5-6. Ah. Nick's dad. Here we go. Do you have a two-time Barlow for your telescope? Is that the two-time?
Yeah.
Thank you. Number 33. 33. Ah, Estelle, it's your night tonight, boy. It's your night tonight. The winner. But it doesn't have to go. Thank you. Number 45. Pleiades. 45 to Pleiades. There's Hands, lucky Hands. See, good thing you came, eh?
Yeah.
Thank you. Number 32. 32. Ah, here we go. About a half a dozen. Yep. Next number. 60. 60. Whoops. No problem. Number 60, our last guest. 60. 60. Flashlight. It's an LED flashlight. It's an XL, extra large. That's good. Okay, thank you. 69.
60 be the last ticket.
She wanted that ticket. I don't know why. We only sold it to 60, but she wanted 69. Okay, thank you. I'll make sure that.
I
Yeah,
don't have much pig. It's a winner.
it is. Excellent.
What's your number, Brian?
Thank you. That's an eyepiece.
I know an eyepiece when I see one.
So still 5 images. 5. Number 17, the Swan or Omega. 17.
Oh, it's mine. Awesome.
How'd it go, Eric?
I won something. I win every year.
Yeah, that's my
You?
number.
You? I'll pick another one.
Okay.
Nice eyepiece. I think, sir. 25. 25. 25. Art. Oh! LED flashlight. Or an eyepiece. Pretty slim pickings now. Another winner. Thank you. Number 10. Thank you. Okay, we still have a baseball cap that has an LED reader on it. Not a reader, but a light. And a jeweler's magnifying eyepiece. So if you look for scratches or dust bunnies on your eyepieces. Number 27. The dumbbell. The dumbbell. Oh, sorry, Peter. That was the number I was calling, Peter, not you. The dumbbell. Which one?
Deborah won't let me do that one. Here.
Oh, you go for the optics. You go for the optics. Oh, you want to pick the last one?
Okay.
And the last one, the lucky winner of the hat is... Well, they actually call it a nightcap, I believe. No alcohol involved. Thanks to you. Number 20, the Triffid. Number 20. You got a hat.
Ah, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for all the great contributors of the door prizes. Hope you all had a great time tonight. That's it. Who didn't win? Show of hands, who didn't win? Oh, you're all winners in my book. Also, I've been given some tickets here for the expose on photography coming up this weekend in Ottawa, 16, 17, 18. There are 4 of them left. They're $20 value at the door, but these are some freebie giveaways. So first 4 that ransack Eric over here can get them. Thanks, folks. So ends my career as vice president. Hopefully by 2 weeks' time, I'll move up to his spot, move into his house. Can't wait to move into your house. I cannot wait to move into your house. It's been a great couple of years. Please drive home safely. We want to hear from you and not about you. Have a good evening. Thanks a lot.
why are we here? What's the origin of life? Why the properties of the universe are the way it is still a quest.
The 30-meter telescope will allow us to understand each and every one of these questions.
The primary mirror is 30 meters across. So that's 3 times the diameter of the current largest telescopes.
At that scale, it's virtually impossible to build a single piece of glass. So the way we will achieve this size is through segments.
TMT builds on the heritage of the Keck Observatory. The Keck telescope was the first segmented mirror. The mirror itself is made up of 36 segments that all lock together to make a single surface.
30 meters is roughly 400 segments. It's big enough that you can make the next leap in terms of our understanding of the physical universe, while not being so big as to be unbuildable.
We have chosen the summit of Mauna Kea as the site for the 30-meter telescope. This followed a 5-year campaign of testing sites all around the world. It is an isolated mountain in the Pacific Ocean, has extraordinarily good atmospheric turbulence properties. This gives us very sharp views of the distant universe. There's been great progress over the last 10 years in a phenomenon which we call adaptive optics, which allows us to correct for the blurring in the Earth's atmosphere.
The trick to this is to shine a laser into the atmosphere and to watch the spot to tell us how that atmospheric distortion is happening.
So the correction effectively takes out the twinkling of starlight and renders them as very sharp points of light. It means we not only can see fainter objects, but we can actually see details much more clearly than we would ever have been able to before. The Hubble Space Telescope has definitely set a milestone in high-resolution imaging. We've all seen beautiful pictures of distant galaxies. TMT, with adaptive optics, gives us a much finer quality of detail than Hubble Space Telescope. Hubble is about 2.5 meters across. TMT is 30 meters across. So we have that ratio, a factor of 15 or so, improvement in image quality, plus the bigger aperture that enable us to see fainter details. So you're impressed with Hubble? Wait till you see TMT. When we look deep in space, we're looking back in time. And so what I'm trying to do is, in a sense, build a picture book of how the universe has evolved from its beginnings to the present day. The 30-meter telescope will allow us for the first time to understand when did the very first galaxies and stars switch on in the universe.
The big challenges in astronomy is to be able to detect Earth-like planets around stars other than the Sun. And this to date has not been possible. And with the 30-meter telescope, we should be able to detect an Earth-like planet and to take spectroscopy of this planet to understand the potential for life elsewhere in the universe.
90% of the material in the universe is dark. We don't see it. The 30-meter telescope will allow us to look at the structure of dark matter. If you like, its granularity. Is it smooth? Is it lumpy? On very, very fine scales. TMT, in studying dark matter, will actually complement laboratory experiments trying to detect dark matter, for example, at the Large Hadron Collider in Geneva. So TMT is an enormously powerful science instrument that's part of the armory of the physical scientist over a wide range of wavelengths and even disciplines. It's 400 years since the telescope first was invented, and it's been an astonishing story of scientific discovery. And the 30-meter telescope will extend and continue that story in a dramatic way.